Chaos and Comedy, where we explore life on the spectrum.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Jennifer.
In each episode, we dive deep into life surrounding the neurodivergent, exploring life, complex and often comical dynamics between society, family, education, and more.
Through building understanding, we hope to build a community. So like and subscribe for more Chaos and Comedy as we explore life behind the scenes of neurodiversity. What you been doing, Kev?
Not sleeping.
Where you been?
Not sleeping.
Where you been?
I've been in Washington State.
Wait, are you an absentee owner that has actually been present?
Yes. Whether I want to or
Stop.
not, whether I want to or not, sometimes work requires that you actually be present and available.
It's amazing they have this thing these days, and it's called airplane, and you can fly in.
I know.
And also, they have these other things that are like videos, like Jetson type, where you can like participate in everything through visual, like through a video, and you can be connected. You can be in rooms. We have all kinds of like tools so that we can be in meetings and be interacting with kids, and
right. No,
it's awesome.
I know. I've heard about it. I don't know if you've ever seen it before, where they have these phones now where you can actually like call someone up and
be on FaceTime.
And I can actually
it's
see
called
them.
FaceTime.
Oh,
what?
It's called FaceTime. Yes, it is. That's an amazing. You can have that and actually be kind of present. So it's an amazing technology.
It's one of the questions we get.
No, exactly.
Like, how do you travel and be, around?
Yeah. How are you a business owner?
Yeah.
Living in Texas, but have a business in another state.
Yeah. Yeah. We have lots of businesses in lots of different states, and that's the fun, cool thing about life today, right? With technology, is that we can actually be present in every situation.
Absolutely. And speaking of technology, I would like to talk about that with you today, if you're up for it.
Yeah.
Mostly because I've been reading a book called The Autistic Brain by Temple Grandin. Mm-hmm. And as I'm getting into it, understanding that when she was diagnosed and the people who were diagnosed before her, like when as a society we started recognizing that.
Was she about your age? Our age?
No. She older.
No way.
She talks about, in the book, Dr. Cannon, and he started diagnosing and coming up with the term autism and kids as far back as 1936, that they were actually documenting in kids who were different. Most people would tell you that autism is probably within the last 40 years, and that it's our diet and things like that, and that we have more technology so that we're now looking for those. When in reality, this is something that's existed at the very beginning of the turn of the century.
That's like everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I can think of everything. Women used to be considered hysterical, when really what we would call that now is depressed or anxious, and, we would just drug them up with Valium. Yeah. And, so, the kid who was a little odd, a little weird, a little difficult, a little whatever was probably, one of any diagnosis. It's kind of like, oh, are we seeing kids with more ADHD now? Probably not. We just know how to identify it. And yes, there's other things that give ADHD-like symptoms, and there's things that give autistic-like symptoms, but that's different than having the actual issue. And I think that's the evolution of any of these diagnoses that weren't diagnosed. They finally start diagnosing, and then people start talking about it, is we have this evolution where then everybody whose kid ever had anything like that, they all think their kid is ADHD. I remember going through that with ADHD, when Thomas was being diagnosed and going through that, that was when everybody was saying, oh, everybody's kid is getting diagnosed with ADHD. They don't all have ADHD. And so I was fighting a bias of overdiagnosis.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I hear you, but he actually really has it.
No, that is a true statement. I will honestly tell you that there was a time in the beginning of our relationship when I probably felt a little bit the same way. Is that, oh, everybody? So are we saying that everybody has it? When in
Oh, I remember a specific conversation with you.
yeah. Oh, you do remember that? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
no. Well, I'm honest. That was the conversation we had. I felt like, oh, you're just saying everybody has it.
Can we talk about that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go for it.
So we're at a conference, right? And we're at the end of the conference, and we've gone. How far are we into our relationship? Maybe 2 years.
We were 2 years in.
Yeah, and so like everyone that I had come in contact with that had known you before me had at some point taken an opportunity to say something along the lines of, his son is on the spectrum, right? And I'd be like, yeah, I see that, but I don't think he knows. I don't think the family is acknowledging. And so they would like look at me like, are you crazy? I mean, because these were educators, these were people in your life who'd known you, who'd known him.
Yes.
Your whole life. Loved you guys, like all kinds of, like it wasn't me saying it. It was people realizing that I was in a similar field or the field that I was in, and then feeling like it was an opening for them to acknowledge what was going on with what they noticed with your son. And, I'm like, well, I don't think we talk about that. And so I'm like, I come from the mindset and the background where you don't force that information on parents. Like they're never receptive. It's rare parent who's like going, what is going on with my kid? I need an answer. Most parents don't want to hear that their child, isn't perfect. And so, being in the school systems and stuff, it was really ingrained in us, don't ever give a diagnosis. Don't ever say you think their kid is anything, right? Just let tests speak for themselves. Let parents, give them information to go gather more information, point them in directions, but don't ever go down that road like that because, they don't want to hear that. Parents don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
And
that's a true statement. I was not in a place
ever
to where I could accept that honest assessment of people with what they were seeing.
Well,
I didn't want to hear it.
Right. Well, and I mean, I don't know what your guys' experience was with people, mentioning it or not mentioning it or talking to you guys about it or not talking to you guys about it. I don't know, because I wasn't there. I know that the story you told me about, him being tested for SPED when he was younger and how offended you were, because you felt like, they were targeting him for being a little brown boy who was very sensitive and very affectionate and sweet and kind. And that they were, misunderstanding that and trying to make it into something that there was something wrong with him. And then when the academic tests came back that he was fine, you felt kind of vindicated. Like, yeah, see? So what do you want me to do? Apologize because my kid gives a lot of hugs?
Well, I felt that way because that's exactly the way they treated it. That's exactly what they said. When I asked questions about what brought them to what they thought the need to have him tested. And what they told me wasn't anything I'd ever heard before. They basically said, well, he's very kind, that he's very loving. And
like when you're telling me this story and I know you and I'm like, okay, police officer starts interrogating. I know that didn't feel like it to you, but I'm sure to the school of people, they are very sensitive. And so they were feeling on the hot seat because I know that we don't like bringing new information to parents. Then on top of it, you've got a police officer and his wife, who's a police officer, both probably very aggressively like, please explain to us why you think there's something wrong with our kid. And the school people being like, it's nothing. He's great. It's fine. Because exactly what I'm talking about. Nobody wants to tell parents that there's a concern. So it's very difficult because parents don't generally respond well. And I can imagine, especially based on my conversation with you, when we finally talked about the elephant in the room, what your reaction was then. I can only imagine what it was when you were a younger parent and even more not open, even more closed to any idea of your children being anything but brilliant and perfect.
Oh, well, let's just be very clear. I'm not ashamed. I will tell you exactly. I am comfortable telling you exactly how I felt. I am also comfortable saying that I don't feel the same way today. I'm not all the way over onto the other side, but I'm more open to things as I have knowledge. And I can tell you that if they had presented knowledge to me, and they had said, hey, here's what we know, here's what we think, and here's what we want to try to prove or try to disprove. That's not how it was presented to me.
Yeah.
So it was presented to me in a way that made it sound like that because my child was a nice kid, because he listened and liked to be a good helper, that somehow so that was wrong and we need to check him.
Yeah.
So I'm like, in the same school, there were kids who were stabbing each other with pencils and stealing from the teachers.
Yeah.
And they're okay. But the fact
Right.
that my son was likes to take up for little kids, or if there was a little kid who was physically disabled, maybe he would, and nobody was playing with, he would go over and play with them.
Yeah.
So they have somebody to play with. And that he would ask the teacher, he would say, hey, can I help? Or do you need something? And he always gave them hugs. This is what they said, why they wanted to test him.
Right. Right.
So these things, which I think are amazing.
Yeah. And to us in education, when we see kids gravitating toward same age peers, like drastically different, right? If we see a second grader always hanging out with the kindergartners, and not able to play with same age peers, that's kind of a telltale for us, because same age peers is almost always a difficult thing for them, and either being overly affectionate or sensitive to affection. You're either sensory seeking or you're sensory avoidant. And so if they're seeing sensory issues that way, but instead of them presenting it in a way that you could understand, they really did a poor job at presenting it, because of, again, from their perspective, they're always scared to tell parents something that parents don't want to hear, and then they're always even more scared to tell them something if parents are, pretty strongly in denial. So now you're going to really have to make a case for it, right? Because they don't want to be accused of anything, because they can't diagnose, because they're not doctors. But also, like, you spend years in this field, you start being able to be like, looks like some things I'm pretty familiar with. And so, they really dropped the ball, because, what when you told me that story at first, I was like trying to figure out what happened. How in the world did this child fall through the cracks? Because there's kids who you can see how they fell through the cracks, and then there's kids where you're like, how did that happen? Because it's so clear to me, like how did y'all just not make sure that something happened? And he was one of those kiddos, and I was like, this is such a failing on the school district's part, because you guys, this is your first rodeo, and that's what I talked about with me and my son. Like, this is a parent's first rodeo, and you're you're blind. You have no idea what is going on. You have no idea what you don't know. What you are explaining away as normal, what your family is supporting as fine, or what your family is saying is a lack of discipline, whatever the issue is, right, with your kiddo. People don't parents don't automatically go to my child has autism or ADHD. So when the school has the opportunity to bring that to a parent's consciousness, it is something that is difficult for them, but they really dropped the ball. And I was angry, I'm just like going along, thinking, so they never came back, like okay, that's fine. The first time, you had parents, like I was like, let me give the school the benefit of the doubt. Parents, no offense, too arrogant. Police officer parents, my children are perfect. What are you talking about? Who are going to be giving some serious pushback. Okay, I get it. They, didn't want to push. The academics came back fine, so maybe we can work with it. But I'm meeting this kid and he's in middle school, right? And I'm like, how did they never come back? How did they never bring this up again? And, I'm listening to mom, have conversations with you about, and you both, being really concerned because he's sitting, at middle school when they went back from COVID, he's sitting there by himself at lunch and you're worried, which is a normal worry. Like, he doesn't have any friends and he's, we want him to have friends and he's sitting by himself at lunch and, and I'm thinking, and nobody's revisited this with you guys. What in the world?
Well, and let's just back up a little bit, because I get that, the fact that they were aware that we're both in law enforcement, but that wasn't the reason why. Because you don't get a pass on that.
No.
Because you get parents who come in and they're from all walks of life.
Oh, 100%.
And they say, hey, listen, this is what your kid. If the conversation was about, hey, listen, when we see young little ones not being around kids in their particular peer group, and they go, Lord, this is what that means to us. This is what we see, and that's why we're concerned. That wasn't the conversation.
Oh no, I don't doubt that at all. Which is, fast forward to our conversation, which was a little bit more direct, right? And probably didn't feel as good because I didn't back down. But after having multiple conversations with people, in your guys' family and friend group who'd known you guys forever, I was pretty confident that there was reason to believe that there was something going on. And so I remember, to be fair, I mean, you didn't take it well, but also I don't back down from the hard conversation either. So, it was like, well, he's on the spectrum, right? You got immediately like offended. You were like, excuse me? No, I don't know that. Why would you say that? And then I did what you just said. I gave you concrete examples. He walks on his tiptoes. He flaps. He does this. He does that. He does this. He does these things that are all very telltale that would, say, hey, you should get a diagnosis for this kid. And then your response was, well, if he's on the spectrum, then I guess so am I. Do you remember what I said?
And she said, yes, you are.
No, I didn't say yes. I went, maybe.
No, you didn't say maybe. You don't try to cute it up now.
I can't diagnose. I can't diagnose. So I said that because I always say that. I can't diagnose, but there's a good possibility.
I love you to death. You said that.
And also, you have, a pretty significant amount for one family in your family.
No, well, like I was saying, with education, right? You have a better understanding of what's happened. When you present me with, because I will freely admit I'm a stubborn person. And if you want to get me off my point, you have to be just as stubborn and you have to present facts.
Yeah.
And whenever we have a conversation like that and you present facts, I don't just stay stubborn.
Right.
I move off my point, and because I want to learn. So let's not forget, we're talking about, like you said, this was my first rodeo.
Yeah.
It wasn't theirs.
Right.
It wasn't the
Right.
first time they experienced it.
Right.
And they presented information, and then when they saw my reaction, there wasn't any follow up.
No.
You
Well,
know,
that's
there
what I'm
wasn't
saying.
any
Like,
follow-up or
never again did they come
Yeah.
revisit it. That's such a cop out,
Well-
right? Like, because you're right. Like, they deal with parents of all walks of life and all different types of things, you know, and whether or not you were easy to communicate with or not is no excuse, because, you know, the student still needed the support. And so they allowed, for whatever reason, their, you know, discomfort with communicating with the parents to override what the student needed. And, you know, you can't do that.
No.
You have to, because if you can at least show through your actions as the people in the education side of it that you genuinely are advocating for somebody's child, then even if they don't like what you're saying, there will be a bridge that gets built between you and them that is at least built on the commonality that you both want what's best for this kid.
Yes.
And so regardless of whether they like what you're saying or they agree with you, if you can take a rational, more like less emotional, more compassionate and patient approach to understanding that, you know, these parents are wrestling with emotions and feelings and all kinds of things. Maybe they have their own struggles. Maybe they have their own communication difficulties. You know, there's all kinds of other factors involved. So your job as the educator in the situation is to try to build that bridge and take the time needed, because the real goal is getting the student the supports that they need.
Well, and let's just take it a step further. At this particular time, we had resources.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of different things that could have been done.
Yeah.
What I think about now is for those parents who don't have the resources.
Yeah.
And, you know, and to get the same thing. Because I look, knowing who I am and educating myself in this,
Oh, yeah.
recognizing that how a child with who's on the spectrum comes into existence. It comes into existence because of the two parents. So when you look at the statement you made when you said, "Hey, remember what I said to you?" and you said, "I guess that makes me autistic too." Well, that is because the traits that you were describing that would kind of tune you into maybe this kid could be on the spectrum were the same things that I exhibit, the things that I've done as a child, the things that I've gone in. And what we have a tendency to do is we think that because we got through it, that just means that we weren't over there.
Right.
No, that just means that we learned to mask.
Right.
And we learned to make it work for us, which is why a lot of successful people in this world.
Yeah, it
are on the
wasn't
spectrum.
severe enough to prevent you from functioning somehow in life, right? And you were fortunate that how your life path went, that where you struggled with things, you were able to figure out how to make it work for you, or you learned how to mask tremendously, or you, you know, you accommodated for yourself, you know. I mean, I look at Savannah, you know, and I see that, you know, even parents who are in it like we didn't get her diagnosed till she was 18 almost. And, there are so many things that we didn't realize she was masking, and accommodations that we were just naturally making. And, so lucky for her that her life path took her in such a way that she had natural supports and things in place that made it maybe less impactful on the outside, right? But what we're not accounting for is how much it's impacting them on the inside, and seeing her come into her acceptance of her, diagnosis now. We see her talk about, we hear her talk about, things that we were like, oh, that's just whatever. And then I'm like, well, I did the same thing when I was a kid, or her brother did that too. And her other brother did that too. And, and it's not that, like, each individual thing might not necessarily be a telltale. It's when you put multiple things together that it becomes more and more of a, I think we're dealing with something here. Yeah. Because stimming, for example, we all stim, that's not in and of itself a thing. We all find ways to self-soothe, to self-comfort, right?
Yes.
But it's when it's done certain ways, when it's done, frequency and how, and pair that with, 4, 5, 6, 7 other things that individually by themselves are not a concern necessarily.
Yeah.
And then you start going, oh, maybe we've got something here. And I think that was what you were thinking too. It was like, well, I did those things. I had some of that stuff.
I did those things. My son and I are extremely similar, and a lot of the things that we considered flags or triggers to thinking of something else, I exhibit those same things. I came up through them.
Right. You just got beat.
It is
for real. Like,
change it. Stop doing that.
I know, but I'm sure if you stimmed when you were little, you'd have gotten whacked.
Well, because we were told to sit still.
Yeah,
you
that's what I'm saying.
Sit still and
like you get whacked.
To move around.
Yeah, and like now, we just go, oh well, they're just doing whatever they're doing. Yeah, I remember you sending me videos in the very, very beginning, because we wouldn't spend time together when we had the kids, but you would send me videos of like your daughter twisting her feet like this, and then it getting more, and then her getting up and then pacing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth when she was watching a show that she just like absolutely loved, right? And I was like just so tickled. I just thought how cute. And in my world, I'm like, oh, she's like, that's so like ADD, like, it's so ADHD, like she's so excited right now. And you were just like, she's just excited. But for me, it was a different lens. It was like still cute because ADHD kids are my fave, but, also, I'm looking at it like it's two things. Like it's just who she is, but also it's a byproduct of, it's a symptom of, she's getting this energy out, know, and,
Well, the more education that you get, and that's why I'm in this place that I'm at today, is because the more education you get, the more understanding that you have, and it doesn't seem wrong. When you don't have information, when you don't know what it is, then you automatically go to, oh, you're trying to say there's something wrong. No, It's not about being wrong. It's about giving your child the opportunity to learn at their pace.
Right. It's about the supports. That's why I say the supports that help them not to change who they are, right? Not to say, hey, there's something broken with you, but it's literally to make sure that they get the best chance of being supported the way that they need to be supported. And you have to be careful. What does that support look like? And what kind of support are you going to be, interested in them receiving? For sure. Like the medication debate comes to mind with ADHD, right? That's a support. How much do you want to medicate your kid? Do you want to medicate your kid? Do you want to go to supplements? Do you not want to do any of that? And you want to do, environmental modifications? You want to stay away from? It's okay. Like there's no right or wrong way to support people with special needs. The key is knowing what your options are and them knowing what their options are. I mean, I have to say, like, one of my proudest moments, because Jack is our only one who has been diagnosed from a somewhat younger age, even though he's still late.
Yeah.
But it makes me really proud, like, not really proud that he had a police interaction, but it wasn't a negative police interaction. And, police officers talked to him and he got so scared initially because that's just, anxiety and freak out. Police officer wants to talk to me. What did I do wrong? And he was, he quickly did what we trained him to do, which was make sure if you ever, have to talk to police officers that the first thing you say is, I'm on the spectrum. I have autism, and I have a lot of anxiety and I'm really scared right now. Because if you use those words, then it will help the police officer understand whatever they're seeing going on with you maybe isn't what they might think it is.
Yes.
And so it's a way for him to help keep himself safe.
To advocate for himself, to be able to say, this is who I am. See me in, like you said earlier, in a different lens.
Yeah. See me through the correct lens.
Yeah.
Because we're all going to see people through an assumed lens until someone corrects that assumption. And, I mean, he's a normal kid when it comes to like awareness, where like he did that there, but then, there's been interactions with friends in the neighborhood or whatever, or other kids in the neighborhood, maybe not friends, but, where I've been like, hey buddy, can we tell them that you're on the spectrum so that maybe they understand why, this is happening? And he's like, no, he doesn't want them to know because he's afraid he's going to get made fun of. And so still trying to like combat the stigma, the embarrassment, the whatever, with the other kids and with him, right? To not let him internalize this is something you need to be embarrassed about, and more so be like, no, you're just explaining to them what they're seeing. Because if you were a typical kid and you said what you just said, you're going to fight.
Yeah.
But if you explain to them that you're on the spectrum and you don't mean that way, then they can start helping you navigate the relationship with them. Like I used to say like, hey, listen, I don't mean to be rude, but I get accused of that a lot. So, it's okay to say to me like, dude, did you mean to hurt my feelings right there? Dude, that was pretty harsh. That was pretty rude. Because like that, you might say that to a normal person and they might get really defensive and they might be like, fuck off. But for me, I'm like, oh, no, I didn't. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Really? Because I don't see that I'm doing that.
Yeah.
A typical person, when they're doing that, they know that they're doing that, right? So when you call them out on that, you're kind of like asking for a fight.
Yeah.
But for me, you're not asking for a fight. You're actually helping me realize my tone, my face, I don't even realize my face. I get told about my face all the time.
Yeah, you have to be to be able to receive that information in a positive way. You have to know who you are, and that helps. And I would say that for Jack, what I feel for him in the future, what makes me feel good, is the fact that as in my role, it's as more education I get, that I can part that education on him so that he understands, because they look to us. If we're offended, they're going to be offended.
Right. And if we are acting like that means there's something broken with you, so we're going to be in denial, then they're going to feel like that means that they're broken. When I put Savannah in therapy at 12, and it was literally only because her dad and I had split, and I was like, hey, therapy should be like going to the dentist or going to the doctor. We should all have one just sitting there, that's on standby. And I said that to her. I said, I don't want you to take this like, I think you're broken or I think you're going to be broken. But I do think that you're a normal human being who's about to go through puberty, then teenage, then young adultness, then adultness. And, all of that, everyone agrees, is some of the hardest times in your life. And having someone that you've already established a basic relationship with, who's a trusted adult, who's not your mom and your dad, but is somebody who is going to give your child, trusted, sound advice, which makes sure it's a good therapist, but, is valuable. It's an invaluable tool for them to be able to have. So, being able to, for them to know who they are, I see kids now who've known who they are, who've, had the words given to them about what they are experiencing, how they experience the world, how the world experiences them. And they are given, help, words, scenarios. And I see them more and more be able to explain to other people what's going on for them. And then other humans, you have to be a pretty asshole human to hear somebody say to you, like, hey, I'm on the spectrum, so blah, 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 to say, I don't give a fuck. That's not a common response. A human response is to go, oh.
Yeah, and because that's what we do. When we know someone who is, we view as disabled, we automatically want to present accommodations for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge.
The invisible disabilities.
Is the invisible disabilities.
And that's why they have to, the kids who are in the wheelchairs and, if you have a visible disability, they don't have to announce it to the world. And kids who have invisible disabilities have to be taught to kind of announce it because their behavior is announcing something else.
Yeah. Well, because we are taught that that's something, which is why, when I was talking earlier, when we began this conversation, was about technology and where we are, is because the more information that we have a better understanding. I go back and I replay the things in my head of the kids I used to know, my own family members, oh wow, they were on the spectrum. Oh, wait a minute, this kid had ADHD. Because back when I'll be 57 on my birthday. When I was in elementary school, if the kid was hyperactive, as they were called then, we called it ADHD. Now they were hyperactive. Yep. When I was a kid,
and we only called boys that.
Yeah.
We never called a girl that.
And they were prescribed Valium. You know
what they called girls, right?
What did they call them?
Social butterflies.
Social butterflies. Yeah. Boys were hyperactive.
Girls were social butterflies.
Ants in their pants, couldn't sit still. All those things that
blurting out
that we see now.
Had to be the class clown.
Class clown. Mm-hmm. Well, as we get more information as a society, as we know more about it, it becomes less as a stigma. So, I'm hopeful that 5 to 10 years from now, we won't even we'll have to, if we still have a podcast, we'll be talking about something else. Because as a society, we've educated ourselves enough to know that, because once we educate ourselves, then our little ones will be educated in it. And because I hear Jack advocate for himself, and not just in the situation with his peers, but with adults, with myself. He'll say, if we get in a tense conversation about something that he wants and I'm telling him no, he will say to me, I don't like how I'm feeling right now. Mm-hmm. And then remind me, I'm on the spectrum. I don't process.
Yeah.
I don't process the way you process. He said, this was a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
A 12-year-old say that to me, which caused me to pause.
Yeah.
And to rethink about how I was going to communicate with him. So if I
What's really cool, sorry.
No, go for it.
What's really cool to me too with him is because we've been having these conversations with him since he was little, even before we knew what was going on. We just talked about what's going on, right? And empathy and just being like, hey, you don't have to do that to tell me that, you need a break or whatever. Like you can just say this, and then he'd be like, oh, okay. But what's really cool is the ability to flip that around with them too. And say, like, so specifically, he's very sensory seeking and I'm very sensory sensitive. Mm-hmm. And that's, a sucky combination because I really want to be affectionate with him. You know what I mean? Like, I know how much he needs it. And if he could just be Velcroed to me 24/7, he would, he'd be living his best life. But I'm absolutely opposite, right? So, I give hugs, and I learned growing up to be huggy, to be physically affectionate, and I know that it feels good, and I know that it's good for everyone. So I do it, but I don't do it naturally, and I do it because I know that it's good.
What do you? I was going to say, talk to me about that you don't do it naturally. What does that mean?
Well, I have to think about it. I have to consciously go, like if my kid walks up to me to give me a hug, I had to train myself to welcome the hug instead of be like, oh, why are you so close? Whoa, you're in my bubble, and the reason that was trained into me is because I think back in my family history, and I think it's so funny. My mom, my whole growing up, all I remember her talking about was how cold her mother was and how her mother never hugged them. And my mom was really sensitive and she really needed a lot of hugs and a lot of love and all that. And so my mom was constantly like hugging on us and, holding our hand and, just very, very touchy, lovey, mm-hmm. physical affirmations of you're safe and I love you. And, I didn't really need a lot of that, but I think it like exposure therapied me.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think naturally I'm probably more like my grandmother. So I could have, if she'd been my mother, I probably could have cared less, right? But because it was my mom's mother who was like that, it was really hard. So I think her just talking about that all the time made me aware of the fact that I was like her mom, but I never told her that. And then I didn't want to do to my kids. I didn't want to end up with a kid feeling the way she felt, right? So I, from the very beginning, was just really, really lovey-touchy with my kids. But it's always conscious, it's always, I'm not seeking it out, I'm not, oh, I need this or whatever. I know that I feel better afterwards. I know that it feels good. But my first reaction is, which is funny because like watching my own children now, mm-hmm. Like Savvy is very much me. And I didn't make her do it like my mom made me, so I just tried to start explaining to the kids, like to understand each other. And this is what I mean. Like now we can say to Jack, like, hey, Jack, you know how you want to, hug on, lay on, touch, be right next to any one of us at any given time? Well, like, I'm opposite. So I have a hard time with people coming in my bubble. It makes me feel really overstimulated and it makes me feel really like prickly. And so if it happens too much, then I might get cranky. And, you're feeling good, but I'm cranky. Just like if I didn't give you enough hugs, you would start getting cranky and prickly and feeling a certain type of way. So, teaching him to respect his sister, for example, because he was always wanting to hug on her, and she was always like, and reminding him, but it helped him so that he didn't take it personal, because otherwise he would have ended up like my mom. Like, it feels personal if you don't want to hug me.
Yeah.
When I'm your kid or your sister or your brother or whatever, if I love you and I want to, touch on you, it feels personal if you're not giving me a reason why that's beyond, like, I don't know, I just don't like it, because that just feels personal.
Yeah, it's not enough.
Yeah. And so, it's been nice because we can explain things to him now from that perspective. So, if he has an incessant need to get every question answered. His anxiety, is if it's peaky, he needs to know all the things and all the details and blah, blah, blah. Well, usually at that exact same moment when he's doing that, the reason it's happening is because I'm not able to give him information because I'm completely overstimulated myself. I'm trying to, I've got like 14 different things going on, and now he's over here. Yeah. I need to know. And it's so much more helpful if I just stop and I go, hey, Jack, Mom's really overstimulated right now.
Yeah.
I can't answer all of your questions right now. I see that you need them answered. I see that you're having a lot of anxiety, but I'm having a lot of anxiety because you keep talking and I need quiet for a minute. And then he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Mom. And then I de-escalate too, because then I go, I'm sorry, man. I really wish that I wasn't like this. I really wish I wasn't so, affected by too much noise or like the phones being on. Literally.
No, that's
I was going to say, what is it? Our entire family except me? I don't know who else in our family is affected by noise like I am, but I'm sure there's somebody else. But the rest of you all can have everything going on high all the time. Like, you can have the TV, the phone, you can have music playing, and you're talking. And I'm just like, and then you guys are like, did you hear what I said? No, I can't answer you. I don't know what you're talking about because the music's on and why are you on your phone and it's on and the TV is on and then you want me to focus on the conversation. I don't know what's going on, and then I'm getting angry. Mm-hmm. But once I could just like start explaining to everybody that it overstimulates me to the point where that I don't have any ability to control my sensory overload, I wish I could.
Well, but and thank you for saying that, because I think that when you talk about young parents, if the advice I would give to them is, you have to know who you are so that you can know who your child is.
Yeah.
And if I had a better understanding of who I was at that moment, when I was having that conversation with my son's teachers, if I was aware that that he and I are similar and he's why we're similar and that's those kinds of things, then my reaction would have been completely different.
Oh yeah.
When they were presenting those things to us, I just didn't have enough information.
Oh yeah, I look back at the kid's dad, and so many things of the things that became part of or a symptom of what they deal with overall. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh my God, that's their dad. Or that's me. Mm-hmm. But, a lot of the things too, I'm just like, man, I wonder how different their dad's life would have been if he had known, instead of feeling like, he was just a terrible kid,
Because that's what I'm reading The Autistic Brain by Temple Grandin. In that book, she's talking about Dr. Kenner, who was the one who that started diagnosing and coming up with these terms and what it meant. He was misquoted a lot because he said that, that an autistic child, you look at the parents. And what he meant was the genetics. And because I'm like your father. Oh, that's your trait your father had. Well, then you're probably going to have, if you have that, then your child is probably going to have that too, is what he meant. But what it came off at the time is that if you have it's your fault. It's your fault if you have an autistic child.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it is my fault that my children have green eyes.
Yeah.
It is my fault that they have blue eyes. That is my fault. You know what I mean? Like, everything about my children is a mixture of environment and genetics. Yeah.
It's
right?
my fault that my children are incredibly attractive and charismatic.
They are.
It's my fault.
You did make beautiful children.
And incredibly charismatic. I could just curse.
Yeah. Anyway.
Make it a lie. Anyway, so but we do. So we started off blaming parents. So that and I think that's where it bred the not wanting our kids to anything wrong to be with our kids, because if we could just talk about a little bit about the superpowers, because when you have, like in my family, my grandfather did not finish high school. However, he was the way he was with numbers was absolutely amazing. I mean, for someone who have never, and we're talking about a way different kind of education than what you get today, as opposed to what you got in the 1930s, right? 1940s. The education, it wasn't even the same. And for him to be able to do the kind of math that he was able to do, this was a natural thing. Well, that's part of the superpowers of our kids, because when you see your kid who can hyper focus on something, because I wish I had that ability. You
do. You just wish it was on something useful.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not. Well, unfortunately for myself, I'm gonna have to ask you to pull on that thread a little bit and explain what you mean by that.
Can we talk about the 20-ish storage totes of comic books?
That's a collection. See, I thought you were going to say the...
Can we talk about your... Okay. You could talk about and tell us about every superhero, DC, Marvel, whatever. You could talk for hours. There could be no end. That conversation could go on for days, because you are a walking encyclopedia of all of that. That's hyperfocus.
Okay. See, that's a true statement. That is true.
Maybe ever since you started learning about special education, you obsessively read every book and everything about autism and ADHD that you can get your hands on. So, you've only been in this world for a couple years, but you probably read more books than people who've been in it a lifetime.
I thought you were going to say spices. I thought you were going to bring that up.
Yes, let's talk about your hyperfocus on barbecue and spices, which I am not mad about, to be fair, because thank you. The only thing I'm mad about is that I literally, even the best barbecue places in Texas, still, I find myself going, yeah, it was good. It scratched an itch, but...
Yeah, well,
I like it better when Kevin makes it.
And that's the reason, because when you mass produce, you lose some of the stuff. If you cook for just a small group of people, it's going to all be amazing. If you mass produce it,
how do you know about that? That sounds like hyperfocus over there. Look at you.
Yeah, well,
I'm about to go down the rabbit hole.
No, I perhaps. I was just going to say that that is very much a thing for me when I can do that, but. Think about it with our children when we are seeing them. Like I said, my grandfather was amazing at numbers. I remember my son when we would go to the beach, and he would sit on a piece of driftwood and draw the horizon.
Yeah.
And I used to think that was so amazing. And the fact that, he can write. And when he writes,
Well, he'll draw the same thing over and
Yeah.
over and over and over again.
Mhm.
And, just to some people that might just look like, okay, why does he keep drawing the same picture?
Yeah.
But he's drawing it because he's hyper focused on getting every single tiny little detail exactly
Yeah.
the way that he wants it, or the way he thinks it needs to be,
Mhm.
until he gets it perfect. Because, and hyper focused, to be clear, it presents a little differently in what it looks like with ADHD versus autism.
Yes.
They both have it, but it manifests a little bit differently.
I want to back up a little bit just to tell a kind of a short story. When we bought our first home, and we were moving into it, and because we rented a house together for a while, and we had a pretty large pantry, and when they started to pack the stuff for us to go to the new house, I think we had like 8 boxes.
No, the issue was, babe, the issue was we took our 2 houses and moved into the one rental. And then when we went to go move to the house we bought, the boxes that had never been unpacked from your house combined with the new boxes from the rental, I started unpacking in the bought house.
Yeah,
because at that point, you're stuck with me. I was like, all right, I got him. He's not going anywhere. You are life sentence stuck here. So then I was like, let me go ahead and unpack your boxes. I kind of felt like it was like a violation territory issue before, kind of. At some point between marriage and buying a home together, I decided there was no boundaries anymore. So my life was mine and your life was mine too. And so I started opening every box that had come from your house. And that's when I discovered, what do you call it? A collection of spices? Or do we call that a collection too? Because I don't know what you call, 4 giant, actually there's 6 giant containers of Montreal steak seasoning, for example. That's just one. I mean, there were so many.
Yeah, no.
And the fact that you would get from like Amazon or wherever you got them from, they were like this big of spices. And I'm like, who are we cooking? Are we a restaurant? Why do we need that? And, wait a minute. And that one's Montreal steak seasoning too? Dude, you got the Costco ones. You got like 6 backup. Are you afraid that we are going to run out of Montreal steak seasoning?
Just talking about having education and knowing yourself.
Yo.
Right. I can speak to that now.
You can.
Yeah. I will tell you that I bought the same stuff over and over again. That I would be somewhere and I'm like, you know what I need? Because I had a specific marinade I did for tri-tip. Mm-hmm. And it included Montreal steak seasoning, red pepper flake, brown sugar.
Don't give away your secret.
Yeah, I didn't say how much. Those are the only 3. There were more than that, but those are the 3. Well, what that happened is, whenever we'd be out someplace, I said, you know what I need? Let me get some stuff for that. And I would get the Montreal steak seasoning, the red pepper flake, the brown sugar. A month or 2 later, we'd be at Costco, and I'm like, Montreal steak seasoning. You know what we need? Montreal steak seasoning, red pepper flake, and brown sugar. And then, if I go somewhere and I go, I've never seen this seasoning before. I want to be able to try that. Let me try this. I have dehydrated butter.
Yeah.
And, so I have, that'll make a meat really moist. I have the dehydrated, but I'll put that in my rub for my barbecue. So I'm always constantly thinking about how to rub. One of my things, my superpowers,
because we are hyper focused on how to perfect the barbecue situation, the spice, the rub, the cook, the temperature, what kind of grill, whatever. And I mean, like I said, I'm not complaining.
But it is.
But
so when you see
there
that
are
stuff,
some things
when
that
you see that in our little ones, though, I think that those things should be pushed and celebrated,
Yeah.
because it's, for me, it was the feeling that I got something right. This is something
Yeah.
that I can do.
Yeah.
You know, I was never going to be the tall dude who could dunk the basketball. I wasn't going to be the fast dude who could outrun everybody or throw the football the longest. But when I got down, when I present, like, I remember the first time I used to say, hey, before you leave the house, when we were in our rental, I would say, take something out. It doesn't matter what you take out. You could take out whatever you want, and I'll cook something when I get home. And it's just the way my brain works.
Yeah.
I will look at what you pull out, and then I'll look at what I have spice-wise, and then I'm going to come up with something that we can eat that's going to be okay. And that's just the way my brain, like I
just polar opposite to the way my brain
right.
works.
I don't think about recipes. I go, well, you know what? When I tasted this is what I think I tasted. So then I'll go get those things that I think I tasted, and I put it together. That's just the way my brain works.
Yeah. How well did that work for me to pull things out?
Not well. Not well.
And I always felt so bad because
well.
I was like, it's not that hard, Jennifer. Just go out to the freezer and pull something out. Why is this so hard? But for me, like, polar opposite. First of all, that requires planning.
Yes.
Like, I need to, like, think about that before 4:00. Okay.
Yeah.
Which, that was a struggle. But then also, like, for me, meal planning is all about, what do I feel like eating? I don't know what I feel like eating, you know? And then I got to, like, figure out what I feel like eating, and then that determines what I'm going to take out of the freezer, and then that determines what meal I'm going to make. And it has to be a recipe because it has to be reliable. It cannot just be a surprise. It cannot be a question. Like, what? You know, I mean, and you've dealt with that with me, because like you realize, like, I can't always tell her everything that's in there. And if, it's...
Well, because it's learning. It's like in relationships, and early on in relationships, we learn each other.
Yeah.
My advice to young parents is learn your kids the same way.
Yeah.
Look at you're in a relationship with your child, and just like when you learn your spouse so that you know what their quirks are, you're learning your kid. Yeah. And so I know what my son likes and enjoys, and I try to steer our time together towards those things that I know that he enjoys. Same thing with my daughter. Same thing with our son. Although Jack.
I would say that your older daughters would say that you get too much in a rut. Apple Jacks.
Oh no, they'll tell you. When you talk
Apple
about
Jacks and pizza,
hyper focused.
Yeah.
My 3 older daughters to this day will not eat Apple Jacks, because there was a time when me and their mom, when we first divorced, and they would come over every weekend, and I had discovered that they liked Apple Jacks, and on Fridays we get pizza, and they tell you they don't eat pepperoni pizza, they don't eat Apple Jacks. Because it was one I found,
and I see that with you even now. It's like you get in, you realize something, and then it's like constant, like gotta happen. And so, the people who are benefiting have to remember that they've got to, like, tell you when they're done with that, because you will never be done with it. No. You will just keep trying to provide that thing for them. Yeah. Because last you heard, they liked it. Yeah. And so, whereas most people kind of just go through, like, cycles, or if you're ADHD like me, today it's this, tomorrow it's something else, the next day it's something else. Or I might like it for, like, a week, and that's all I want to eat or all I want to do. But then next week I hate it. I don't want nothing to do with it.
No, and it really, the way my brain works is I'm like, oh, we need something to eat. Well, those things that I know, that's what pops in my head. And I'm thinking I'm doing something great. Well, it can be extremely redundant. So,
well, it's like, I mean, back to, like, drawing the same picture.
Yeah.
Right? It's, to other people, it looks like the same picture over and over again. But to the person doing it, there's little tiny tweaks and little tiny perfections, and there are little tiny, plus also, even if it is the exact same picture, there's a comfort in that, right? So that hyper focus of like, oh, it's also kind of comforting for, for ADHD, I'm in constant pursuit of the goal. And once I hit the goal, I'm bored with it and I'm done and I don't want to do it anymore. But for autism, it looks more like now it becomes a comforting thing to keep doing the same thing. Like, oh, I think, like, if I think about my daughter, she's very uncomfortable when she's learning how to do something. I love learning how to do something. So we're kind of polar opposite, but we will both keep working at it. It's just she's crying the whole time. She's angry. She's, like, don't go in the room. Oh my God. And then once she gets to success, then she just wants to be there for a long time. Yeah. And she doesn't want to come out of that place because she made it, and now it feels good. And for me, it's opposite. I'm like energized and exciting, and this is great. We're going to do this thing. And then as soon as I feel successful, I'm just like, okay, are you done now? Yeah.
No, yeah. Learn your kids, learn your, but you have to learn yourself, because like it makes it easier for me to receive the information about my children, and that where they may or may not be, if I understand that about myself.
Yeah.
And that has been extremely helpful. Yeah. And it makes me a better parent now. But I think back on my older girls, and, it makes me wish, because I could have been a way better parent to them if I had known myself a little bit better, because then I could have helped them find themselves. And it's important. It's important to even going back to the situation with that school district when we were talking about my son. If I knew who I was and I was okay with who I was, then when the information that they gave me about my son didn't really fit the narrative that I had for him, I wouldn't have been so against any of that information the way I was. And and it's important to give information out to young parents, because we still in this country, in our society, I'm not even gonna say our country, I'll say our society, where there's a stigma on, like you said, there's something wrong when it's in some cases it's something wrong, but in some cases it's something right. And if we focus on the right, then we can get our little ones to a place where they can accept who they are. Yeah. And they can find their place there, because there's a lot of successful people in this world. And the difference between them and our kids is they know who they are. Yeah. And they're okay with it.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, I guess that's it for us right now. Thanks for listening. Please comment, like, and share. And if you want to reach out to us, connect with us on social.